And so today I'm going to talk about succession planning. Thank you for Nicole introducing the performance management process. Gave us a really good leeway into managing the talent in the right way, but also growing the talent in alignment with organization's business objectives. So talent management, development, succession planning is always a passion for me. But before we dive into such a deep, serious, heavy topic, I want to share with you a joke. Who's ready for that? Okay, good. So this is a joke called 3 envelopes. So a CEO announced his retirement or resignation, and he said, I'm done with here, I'm going to leave. And so before he left his office, he left 3 envelopes on the desk with a note. Then the new CEO came into the office, saw the note with the 3 envelopes. The note says, if you're ever in trouble, open the envelopes. And the new guy is younger, has so much confidence in himself, he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. So he shuffled the envelopes into the drawer and forgot about it. And he spent the first 6 months really getting to know all the players in the company, trying to change the culture, make a few things work here and there. After 6 months, he's realized that actually he is not that smart. He was trying to make changes, but it didn't work as well as he's hoped for. He felt a little bit upset, sad. He's like, what should I do? All of a sudden, he remembered the 3 envelopes. Opened the drawer, took out the first envelope, opened it. And the first envelope says, inside the first envelope, there's a note, and it says, blame me, which means blame the previous CEO. So the new guy blamed everything he could off his chest, felt much better, took a deep breath, and started second day fresh. 3 months went by, same boat again. He felt like, I've done everything I could, but just the problem is so deeply rooted, I couldn't change the culture. What should I do? Open the drawer, open the second envelope, and the second envelope within there is only 1 note. On this 1 note has only 1 word, called a reorg. Oh, reorganization. Isn't that what many companies do anyway? Fire a few people, pay them severance, change the structure here and there, change the service structure a little bit, and hopefully the problem will be solved. Same thing again. After 3 months, he felt that himself is in the same position again. And now he's really tired. He doesn't know what to do, and he has to open the last envelope. Open the last envelope, there's 1 note, and guess what it says? Prepare 3 envelopes. So that's the joke for my succession planning. The point is that succession planning is a systematic way to plan. It takes a very long time. It does not, the transition, the coaching does not take just on 3 envelopes. Can be a really good transition. And 3 envelopes is not enough to do a succession planning. So with my consulting and life experience here in Canada, I have met quite a few people. And what I found intrigued is all people walk in different stages of their life have experienced succession planning problems. So I met Cindy, 60-year-old immigrant, had opened up a business, family business restaurant with her husband for the last 15 years. I met her, she came to one of the training I delivered called HR Basics in Edmonton. And so she said to me that they never thought about succession planning. The restaurant ran really, really well, and they made some profits. And whenever they needed help, they got their kids to help in the restaurant. And the retirement day for them came a little bit sooner than they had hoped for because of health issues. And they had talked to the kid at that moment the first time. I think it's time for you to take over the restaurant. And guess what the kid said? No, we have our own desire in life. And Cindy and her husband found themselves in the struggle that because they have never done succession planning, they have to sell the business. Basically, when there is no succession planning exists in small business, the business itself cannot even continue. Second story. A good friend of mine is a president of a volunteer nonprofit organization here in Alberta. And he's his own life and job and everything, but he has a big heart for the community. So he started this nonprofit volunteer association as the president. And because of his charisma and his vision, he recruited a group of really passionate volunteers to be working with him on these events and programs. In a couple of years, they grew the organization from 0 members to 400 members. So quite successful in the community, made an impact. And the staff, the volunteer staff had talked to the president saying, you know what, we're working too much here. We're non-paid, we're all volunteers, and we're adding more programs and events. We need to get more people coming to replace us. It doesn't work. We all have our own school and life and work and all that stuff. And the president kept telling them, don't worry about it, we'll figure it out. Let's just get this project done first. And that kept getting pushed, delayed, and delayed. and eventually impacted morale so much that the volunteers had quit on themselves. So for the organization, about when the leader is now putting the weight on succession planning, then the morale of the organization has been impacted so much. Third example, a really established organization in Eastern Canada, unionized, large, lots of impact. The CEO announced his retirement after being in the role for 10 years. And so not until that moment, the HR department, even though it had a huge HR department, they run very traditionally. And not until that moment, the HR department thought, okay, now what do? We need to hire for replacements. First looked internally, no successors. Now they scrambled and got a headhunter to hire externally. For that level, high-level position in a traditional industry, it took a long time for them to get the successor in place. So by the time successor came on board, the previous CEO and the new CEO only had a month to overlap and transition of work and knowledge. The new CEO is from a little bit younger generation, very, very different backgrounds and very different culture and mindset, and he also from a different geographical location. So he came and changed a whole bunch of things. The younger and newer workers really appreciate his style. But you can imagine for a traditional hierarchical organization, the unionized, the long-term leaders did not appreciate. So the CEO resigned after only being in the role for not even 2 years, because he felt that he does not fit in to the culture of the organization, despite all of these big visions he has. So lessons learned, have some succession planning. Don't overlook the cultural fit, even for the successors or senior leaders. So that is the joke, 3 envelopes joke, and then the 3 real-life stories about succession planning, how succession planning can go sideways. So we all heard from the audience that you're here to learn, want to learn about the trends, the updates in succession planning. So what exactly is succession planning? According to Wikipedia, which is HR's good friends, succession planning is the process that the organization ensures employees are recruited and developed to fill each key role within the company. Through your succession planning process, you recruit superior employees, develop their knowledge, skills, and abilities, and prepare them for advancement or promotion into an more challenging role. That's complicated. A definition takes 5 lines. That's a little too much. Let me shorten it. So Ada's humble definition, succession planning is about having the right people for the right role, hopefully at the right time. So shorten it. So now it's the discussion time, and at your table, I am sure that you've attended HR-in-a-Box for a few times, so you know your table mates by names by now. And so in the next 10 minutes, I would like you to discuss on a scale between 1 and 10, how would you rate your organization's succession planning process? And then also please discuss why does you treat it seriously or not seriously. So I'm going to time you 10 minutes. All right, the good time always goes by so quickly, so back to me, please. Now I have 10 minutes discussing about these questions. So first of all, I would like for you to show me by your fingers, on a scale between 1 and 10, how would you rate your organization's succession planning so far? Please raise your fingers really high so I can look at them. If you have none, just be honest about it. There is no shame of it, right? That's why we're here to discuss it. A lot of you are showing me high fives. That's great. Okay. All right. Thank you. And so, why for those of you who raise your hands and say it's above 8, can you tell me why did your organization treat succession planning as a priority? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Well, for those that keep up in the news, I work for Shaw, not that that's in the news, but we recently really had a big reorganization, effective pretty much today. The reason we treat succession planning such a high priority, at least in the people that I've worked with, is because I worked at Shaw for about 5 years and I've had 4 different jobs. You never know. And in our industry specifically, it's changing at such a rapid pace that you have to have the right people ready to go at all times. I can, honestly, even just interviewing somebody, I even have that in the back of my mind when I'm hiring somebody. I'm hiring them for what they're going to become and what I know they can become within the organization. So and that's instilled in me from my supervisor and his supervisor and his supervisor, or her supervisor, and I don't know the whole flow chart, but it's treated as a priority because it very well could be your time to get in the game at any given moment.
Very cool. Thank you. I think that's a really good summary of the reasons. And the organization treated as a priority. What about the sad story? Yeah, why doesn't your organization treat it as priority?
I think in one sense, it's just another thing to do. It's another one of those big picture things that gets lost in the urgent of day to day. And I was just saying, to me, I think succession planning, it's a little bit like, do you have your will in order?
Right.
That if, you know what, if I can't come back into work on Monday, are things going to run? And so you just keep assuming that you're going to keep coming in on Monday. So it's one of those things, okay, we don't need it right now, so actually we'll just deal with it later.
Yeah. Push it back a little bit. Anybody else? Oh, sweet. Share if you like. So stories around us. Politics is always hot in the news. So actually, but I don't know if any of us know, but the American presidential line of succession started in 1792, which means if the American president cannot continue his term, the vice president will take over. If something happens to the vice president, then the Speaker of the House will take over. If the Speaker of the House cannot fulfill the duty, that's too unfortunate, but of the Senate will take over, so on and so forth. So they had started talking about succession planning at a high level in 1792. And you probably think, okay, that's American. Politics has nothing to do with us here in Lethbridge. But actually, there are lots of large companies that have really good, successful stories about succession planning. So the world's largest hotel company called Marriott, they started succession planning a long time ago. Bill Marriott, who was the previous CEO and chairman of the company, he had groomed his successor for 16 years before he retired. And the successor, Mr. Arneson, so he had worked in the company, and he was actually in a little bit of competition with Bill Marriott's son, who was also working his way up in the company. But at the end, Bill Marriott chose Mr. Arneson to be the successor because he knew that his son was just as capable, but his heart is somewhere else other than be the successor of the company. So that was the first time that a successor for the Marriott Hotel Group actually came from outside of the family, but it was a success. So what did Bill Marriott tell us is that he does not believe in horse race succession. It's very disruptive, and the person who loses inevitably ends up leaving the company. I didn't want that. Another really successful story I want to share with you is the McDonald's. Yes, so the restaurant is successful and the biggest restaurant chain in the world. And but I don't know if we kept up with the old news. In 2004, there was a back-to-back CEO tragedy. So the previous CEO at that time, James Cantalupo, he was heading into meeting 12,000 employees, vendors, franchisees in the United States, and he died of heart attack just before he went into the meeting. The meeting was put on hold, and so Charles Bell was the successor. He was an Australian. He was only 44 years old at the time. He had worked in McDonald's for 20-some years, and he was groomed, and he became the CEO right away. So didn't let any gaps there, and he became CEO. Unfortunately, he resigned after 6 months because he was diagnosed with cancer. And then right at the time, James Skinner came from the pipeline. James started his career with McDonald's 33 years ago before he became the CEO. He started off flipping burgers in the restaurants. But he moved up really quickly in the organization and became a really successful CEO. So his tendency at that time, before go around the company, talk to the leaders and ask, hey, can you give me 2 people's names who would succeed your positions? And that's his way of leading people, lead by examples. So before he retired, he had groomed the next CEO for 7 years. So he was very confident that the next CEO will do a good job and take over. So let me ask you that question. Think about your own position. Can you name 1 to 2 people inside the organization who will be able to succeed you if something happens to you tomorrow? Hopefully not, but people who say yes, please raise your hands. That's great. So half of the room, I'm actually pretty glad to see that. When I delivered a session in Edmonton, we didn't even have as many number of people raise their hands. So that's really good. So the most important about succession planning is that it's not a one-time thing. It's not a, hey, let's do it because it's fancy. It's not because we have lots of time, lots of money, lots of resources that we have nothing else to play with. It should be taken very seriously, and it's not a short-term deal because a succession planning, a systematic one, can take up to 5 years to build and to be tested. And it should be part of the overall business planning. So as Nicole has mentioned about KPI, the key performance indicator index, so it's the same thing. Succession planning should be aligned with your KPI, be aligned with your business goals and objectives. And business leaders really need to see the need and accept the need of succession planning in order for it to be successful. So question often I get is, where do I start? We'll start with internal scanning. First, let's talk about why do we care about succession planning, and then talk about the what. What do we success for? And then how do we do it? Who should be involved? And when is a good time to do it? So despite all these fancy reasons that companies do succession planning, such as want to ensure a good supply of qualified leaders in the company, want to build a good reputation, have really good employee morale, want to make sure our success continues, all of these good stuff. Still, you showed me the numbers of how many companies really treat succession planning as a priority. Not many, right? So why? Why is it not a priority? We know people are busy. And however, we want to ensure the continuity, whether it's because of retirement, death, or changes in personal life, or changes in the business environment. So some of you had mentioned you work for long-term organizations that experience lots of changes, right? So when the changes do happen, do we have a good plan? So in 2008, there is a more closer story to us. So in 2008, Edmonton company called Williams Engineering had experienced the back-to-back CEO tragedy as well. So the father who owned the company at the time, he was a really good pilot. He was flying a helicopter with 2 other VPs in the company from Edmonton to be plane crashed. Everybody died. And exactly 5 months later, his son, who took over the CEO position, he's also a very good pilot. Same story repeated. On that plane, he had himself with 4 other executives. So the company left in a crunch after these 2 back-to-back incidents both happened in 2008. It's a family-run business. So if there was no succession planning, the business may not be able to continue. Also, we want to ensure there is the smooth and better continuation of the business to grow it, improve employee engagement. So we talk about the purposes, and then we need to talk about what exactly do we want to make sure we success of, we want to ensure the continuation of, basically. So it could be the products, what we sell, what we build, what we're famous for, our services, our business reputation, the marketplace. It could also be our functions. If supply chain or IT or HR is our strongest suit, something we're most proud of, that could be something we want to build succession continuation of as well. It could be the financial growth. It could be just our core competencies. So do some heart-scratching, soul-searching. Ask yourself, what is the core competency for our organization? Okay, that may be too fancy a word. In other words, why do we exist in business? So what kind of services, products can we not live without in our business? And these are the things we want to make sure that there is continuation of. Otherwise, the business is going to be finished, right? So let's talk about the how. So who should be involved, what tools we need to use, and when's a good time to do it. So we talk about the purpose, why succession planning is so important. We heard about all these tragic situations and stories, some success stories, and then we talk about the what we need to be successful of. So now let's talk about the people. That's always seemed to be the critical component, critical position that I want to ensure the continuation of. They need to meet 2 basic elements. Number 1, which position inside our organization drives the key delivery of key strategies and services. Basically, in other words, the core competency of our organization. Think about it. Second component, which position have a serious impact on delivering the services and products. So can you think of in your organizations that satisfy these criteria? It doesn't position. It could be, but it doesn't always have to be. It could also be so hard to hire, it's so unique, but it supports the business, the growth of your business. Okay. Oh, the hand, okay. So can we think about two positions in our business that are that critical, that satisfy these two criteria? Yes? And what kind of positions are they, if anybody is willing to share?
Sorry, because I work for Gulco Homes. I think that our critical positions are our construction manager, who actually is in charge of building the homes, which we sell. And likely beyond that, I would say maybe a toss-up, but because there might be some overlap, but either financial manager or sales manager who will drive the sales of their products.
Great, thank you. So these are not top leader position of the company. It's not the CEO, it's not the executive director, but they are critical to the survival and continuation of the business. Any other position you can think of for your company?
This was actually at a different company that I worked for, and it was a manufacturing company, about 130 employees or so. So I had gone to the owners and said, we have two critical positions in this company that if they won $1 million, got hit by a school bus or whatever, what's going to happen? And so the one was the one and only salesperson, and the other one was a technical salesperson as well. And I said, what if this top salesperson leaves tomorrow? And the answer was, our business would fold. And so I said, we need to look at doing some cross-training. So we actually did do some cross-training, and thank goodness he didn't die or win $1 million, and he's retired now. But anyways, it kind of woke them up to, oh my goodness, we had really good middle management structure, so everything could run perfectly fine through the plant. But we had those top people on the front lines, and they were so critical. So
great example. Thank you. Yeah, so these are all great examples of the topic. So I would like you to make a note for yourself and think about, it does not have to be just two positions, but think about the critical positions inside your organization. Is it a leader position, or is it a technical position, or sales, whatever the case may be? What are they? And what can we do to make sure that we have succession planning for these positions? And then every organization is different. Don't copy your neighbor's example. So let's talk about the people who needs to be involved. When we have identified, let's say, the top two positions that we need to have succession plans for, we also want to identify where does the talent gap exist for these top two critical positions. Do we have any successors in-house? If so, what do we do with the successors? Are they ready now? Are they ready in 2 years, 3 years plus, and so on and so forth? They may be ready, but they may not be willing to take over that position. Or they may be willing, but they're not ready to take over the position. What do we do in these situations? And if there are no in-house successors ready, what should we do? Should we just leave that position vacant after that existing current incumbent leaves? Or should we look elsewhere and get a preparation started right away? How do we close the gap? So there are a few things. What are we looking for from the potential successors? Really sit down with yourself and your company leaders and jot down some notes. What are the key attributes we look for from these critical positions? And what are the key characteristics we're looking for from the potential successors? It could be the technical skills for the technical leaders that you want to replace. It could also be the soft skills, the interpersonal skills. It could also be someone who is really aligned with your organization's values and missions and visions and have that drive and passion to serve the needs of the communities, especially for our nonprofit friends here in the room. Performance and soft skills and personality trait, leadership styles, and also people who understand the products and services the organization offers, is committed, and or we can develop from within if that's possible. If we need to hire externally and turn external people, how do we turn the external new hires into internal successors? How do we paint them so they are painted the same way as the rest of us who have been with the company 5, 10, 20 years? And some tools. So now this is a perfect opportunity. I would like you to take out your handout. I had a 2-page handout, start with a chart. So it's called Company ABC Succession Planning Charts. Bear with me the lack of creativity in coming up with a company name. So I call it Company ABC. So on this chart, you see that the company has identified 4 critical positions, being the CEO, COO, sales director, and the technology specialist. The anticipated departure date for the CEO is just 1.5 years away. The COO is currently happy, unknown. Sales director has sent in his resignation. The technology specialist, we don't know yet when he's going to leave or she's going to leave or retire, whatever case may be. But it could be a young person that we think there is no further room for development for him or her, that we think that he's going to leave us in just, a year or 2. So that's an estimate. There are a few in-house successors. So Bob, Jennifer are ready now to take over the CEO and the COO position respectively. And James and Lily is ready in 2 to 3 years. And Tyler and Chad are ready in 3+ years for different positions. You also see there are places on the chart that says NA, basically means there is no in-house successors ready or can be identified at this moment. So today is February 2018, and according to the charts, the first priority is for the sales director is to hire externally. Because sales director has put in his resignation, he is going to be done just in a month from now. And we don't have an in-house successor ready now. And Lily is 2 to 3 years apart, so what do? We have to fill the gap right now. That's a critical position, right? In order to ensure the continuation of our business, we need to get that position filled. So we look externally. That's the first priority. Second priority, we want to look at the CEO role overlap and transition, and also retain James as the third priority for the CEO position. Reason being that James will be ready in 2 to 3 years. I don't think that Bob, who is going to be the new CEO in July 2019, going to leave the company in just 1 year or 2 and leave the position for James to take over. So James has been a high potential, high performer for our company. We identified him could be the CEO caliber. What do we do to retain him? If we don't have something planned to retain him, what's going to happen to him? He may leave, or he may not perform as good as before, and then eventually may become the problem, the bad apple in the workplace. Or if he leaves, is that going to leave you leave company ABC in a bad position? For the COO position, so Jennifer is ready to take over, but the COO has not announced anything about retirement or change of plans or anything like that, unless that something happens that he's hit by a bus. What's going to happen to Jennifer? We need to think about a way to retain her or move her maybe to a different position. And then for the technology specialist position, we identify the current incumbent may leave us in 2 years or so. Chad is far away from being ready. So, but that's a critical position for us. It's a technical specialist. It's hard to hire. What do? We train Chad, and hopefully that when the current specialist is going to leave us, that Chad may be ready. And then we can have a mentor coach him, and hopefully that he'll be ready in that role. So this is ideal situation. As we know that in the workplace, we're not dealing with robots, we're dealing with human. And what happens with human? They don't always go play by the plan, right? So it's all gray. And so this is the ideal situation. We can put it on paper, we can look at it, we can have a plan. But plan needs to be evaluated and adjusted and monitored to go with the current situation. And then, of course, there are ripple effects. So for the CEO position, if we have Bob backfill this current CEO position, what do we do with the Bob's position? How do we retain James, for example? And so on and so forth. So that's the chart. That's the one example. There are a few questions I would like you to work with your table mates for the next 10 minutes. Question number 1, the role transition between the current CEO and Bob. What are the main discussion points to ensure the continuation of the organization? So lucky for company ABC, they know the CEO is going to be done in a year and a half, and they already have an in-house successor identified. So how can we make that transition smooth? What are the main discussion points? Second question, yes, for the COO position, the COO is not leaving anytime soon. We're worried about Jennifer. We already see the sign that she may want to grow in the company. If not, then may she go somewhere else. What do we do? How can we train her, retain her? And are there any internal successors interested in moving up? How do we find out if the internal successors are willing to move up to fill the positions? So in the next 10 minutes, I would like you to have the discussion at your table. All right, can I get your attention one more time, please? And here's some answers. I heard some really, really good discussions amongst the tables, and that's what I'm trying to facilitate, is that sharing of knowledge amongst the table mates. And that's how we learn from each other. So can someone tell me, or any table, any person, what would be the key discussion points for the transition between the current CEO, who is leaving shortly in a year, with Bob? Yes, the successor in-house. Let's assume that Bob does want the job. Yes. So what would be the main discussion points?
We talked about job description. So making sure, I guess, that the CEO's job has an updated also
be replaced. Yeah. Yes, so the question is, now assume Bob is wanting to take over the CEO position, and the CEO is going to retire soon in a year or so. What will be the main discussion points for the transition between the current CEO and Bob? We got a hand up here.
So we talked about job descriptions, that both at the CEO job description would need to be updated and current, as well as making sure that Bob's job description is updated because he'll need to be replaced.
Yeah, the ripple effect. Thank you. Any other discussion points between the two CEOs? Yes, Nicole.
Our table talked a little bit about how Bob sees James performing in the next couple of years until he's ready. So does he see James filling his own role, filling Bob's role? Does he see grooming James as well while he takes over that role to have a certain level of redundancy in case something happened to Bob?
Right, that's a good point. So make sure you have the next CEO ready in-house in a few years as well, should something happens to Bob after he takes over. Any other discussion points? Let's put yourself in that shoe and think about for yourself, if you were going to leave your current leadership position and you have your in-house successor sitting next to you, what do you want to talk about?
I would want to discuss the company culture and maintaining this, similar goals, work styles, what worked, what didn't, perhaps any nuances amongst the staff that someone coming into a leadership role might want to be aware of.
Great. That's actually one of my points too. Anything else that you would want to discuss with your successor? Pardon me?
Just finding the 3 envelopes.
3 envelopes, yeah. Okay, that's good. Hopefully your company will hide all the envelopes they produce in the world. Okay. Any other discussion points?
I think I would want to know what the future of the company is in terms of the new perspective. What is your perspective on where we're going to be in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? And if you have a plan and it doesn't work out, it doesn't go the way you intend, how are you going to pivot? How are you going to tell your 5, 10, 20, 2,000 employees that, you know what, we're going to change directions, we're going to do it this way? How do you respond to the adversity that you're going to get from your employees when you do that? Yeah. It's not always the good things. You have to realize there are other things that can happen. And then someone else touched on it already. Are you going to have, how prepared is your successor in case something happens? That's a great point. That's a good point. Yeah. Anything else you would like to discuss? Other than so I've written down a few things as well. So the culture definitely is already touched on. I would also talk about the vision and mission of the organization. Go back to the point, I should just use this mark. Go back to the point of the core competency. Why does our organization even exist? What sets us apart? What are the products and services that are unique? My apologies. The organization, the core competency. Why do we even exist in business to start off with? So, and as the current CEO, yeah, I'm old, I'm retiring, but this is where I want the company to go. This is what I see. What do you think? Where do you like to see the company going? And on top of that, these are the things I've learned. These are the strengths and weaknesses of our organization, opportunities and threats. Yes, sounds like the SWOT analysis we're all familiar with. And also, this is the mistakes I've learned from this position, and also my wish list. The things I couldn't have accomplished that I hope you could, but maybe you have a different lens, so do it a little bit different. So ask these questions. And also the politics. Don't forget about that. It's a leadership position in a company. It does not mean they're not involved in politics. They're involved in politics with the subordinates, with the board, maybe with the union, maybe with the public, the media, social media, whatever the case may be. So do talk about politics as well. That could be part of the culture, but what I see with my clients' companies, sometimes they push that away. They try to avoid talking about it, but truth to be told, we're all human, right? And whenever there are more than one person around, there is politics. Trying to hide that piece is not going to help the new CEO to be on board. Okay, so that's the first question, the answers to the first question. So now let's talk about Jennifer and Lily. So Jennifer is the in-house successor ready now for the COO position, but the COO has not announced any change in his or her status. And also Lily is ready for the sales director in 2 to 3 years. We need her in-house, so we want to train her just in case we don't have a good successor for the sales director position, or we want to have a backup plan. So the question for you is, how can we retain Jennifer and how can we train Lily? What are some of the thoughts?
Starting off with Jennifer, I would talk to her. Like, what does she want? What does she feel that would help her feel more satisfied within the company? Like, in her perspective, like we discussed, it might be a week's worth of holiday, like on top of what she has. Could be a bonus structure added to her pay plan. There's lots of little things that isn't directly dollar based, and so I'd just have that frank conversation with her and what she sees, and just telling her she's a valuable employee and we want to keep her, and how do we do so. And then for Lily, that one, just do the cross training, and if there is more technical aspects that she needs to learn, then maybe it is like a a week conference somewhere, or maybe even a university program that's 1 day a week or something. But yeah, that's kind of what we thought.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
So with regards to Lily, what we had kind of thought is that if she's not ready, like it says here, ready in 2 to 3 years, then this person's ditching out right away, the sales director.
Yeah.
So we thought what would be a good strategy is to go and hire a high-level sales director, but knowing it's going to, like a change agent, somebody that will go in there, really make a change and grow the business, and mentor Lily in a 2 to 3 years with the idea of this is going to be a short-term hire. And then in 2 to 3 years, she's ready, she's had a higher level mentorship, and will come in at that level, which is ideally, hopefully, bigger than the sales director that's currently there.
Very different thought, but that's a good point. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Anybody else? All right, so on the slides, I had already pointed out a few things for retention and training purposes. Let me just explain those. Enrichment of current role. So that's basically, let's say with Jennifer, we talked to her, as the lady has suggested. Okay, Jennifer, how can we retain you? We love you, we want you to be here, we don't want you to go to our competitor, to be honest. What can we do? So Jennifer and her wish list, and the company tries to match that. So how do we keep her in the company other than just the bonus structure or compensation-wise? Because we know that in the senior level positions, compensation is extrinsic rewards. Extrinsic rewards only hold us to a certain extent. It's more about intrinsic rewards at the workplace that holds us. The challenge of the job, the autonomy of the job, the growth opportunity, the leadership, the environments, and the opportunity to train and mentor and coach others. These are the key elements that hold employees accountable and hold them engaged in the workplace. So we could talk to Jennifer about enriching her current role, and we can ask her, brainstorm with the employee, the current incumbent, how would you like to enrich your role? Is there anything in the company that you hear that she does not want to be the CEO? Right, in that situation, then maybe rotate her into a sales position for a year or half, or whatever case may be, and have her in that position, which is what we call a job rotation, job enlargement, job enrichment. Basically have the good performer try out different opportunities so they can grow their skills, grow their experience within the company. So that's the way to retain employee. Maybe Jennifer wants to do something else in her life that she, sometimes these days, especially with younger workforce, you often hear from employees is like, I want to take a different education program. Can I take some time off? Or I want to take my family to go traveling. Can I take some time off? Or I want to explore something different in our life. What can we do? In the States, we have these big consulting companies. They would offer employee time off even to work for their competitors, because the companies assume that the grass is not always greener in the other person's yards. So after you try it out, maybe you come back. And then companies here in Alberta that I also have dealings with, I know they would grant employee time off for educational purposes or for personal growth or for traveling purposes. So it does not have to be just work-related. It could be the overall, the holistic picture of how to grow a person professionally and personally. And with Lily, these also would apply to Lily. So this lady was right. So she talked about that, is it the soft skills that Lily needs, or is it the technical skills that Lily needs? And you guys were right in the way that sometimes we promote people because they do a really good job technically in their current job. Let's say we promote a trades guy because he's really good at doing his trades, really good at being the technician. How often do we really promote people because they're great potential leaders? They have great soft skills, right? Because our evaluation, the current evaluation of the current incumbent, is based on their current performance, not based on their future potential. And their current performance, if it's a technical-driven position, is based on how good they does the technical job, right? So when companies are thinking about these higher-level positions to train, to retain, so the soft skills, the interpersonal skills, is definitely one of the key factors. according to the Peter principle, is that we promote people up to the point of incompetence. So we promote people to the point they cannot be competent anymore. Then what do? Do we just leave them hanging? So you were a technical guy, now you are a supervisor. We left them failing because they've never been trained to be supervisor. What do we do? So these are all the part of succession planning, the small nuances, pieces that we never even think about. But that could be the conversation with Jennifer and Lily. What do you want to do? How can I help? How can we bridge that gap? Sometimes employees have really huge wish list that we cannot satisfy. And you know what? For these people, the way up may be the way out. And that's totally fine. If you're retaining them to the point that you cannot grow them anymore and they're not satisfied and they're going to cause you issues, maybe the better way is for them to leave the organization. And the last question is also a critical question. How do you find out our in-house successors, whether they're ready or not in the year or two? How do we find out if they're interested or not?
You ask them?
You ask them, great. Short, simple, and sweet, exactly. And that's what we always talk about is when I teach my students at McGill University, I say that we're the human resources department. We're not a robot resources department, which means human resources department means we build relationships with people. Building relationships start with saying, hi, how are you in the hallway? To things to, hey, you look tired. What happened? Can I help? Or something like that. That's where basic human connection started, is by saying hi and being friendly and acknowledging. And so basically is to start open up that conversation. As a leader in the organization, as a US manager, if you're willing to open up that door, open up that conversation, employees will be happy to hear that. The manager actually cares about me and ask me, how can I help? And ask me if I'm interested in moving up. That shows a couple things. Number one, my manager has noticed I have really good performance. Number two is that my manager cares about me, that I feel more attached to the workplace. Because we all know that 75% of employees leave the workplace not because of the work, not because of the pay, but because of what? The boss, the supervisor, the direct supervisor, right? So when the direct supervisor open up that door, open that conversation with the employees, actually makes a difference, a ton of difference. And also, if the internal successor is interested in moving up, can also come in a way of, yes, direct communication, ask that person directly. You can also find out in a way by observing, just observing. And also through the performance review process that Nicole had talked about, don't wait until the end of the year. If you haven't heard from me, that means it's good news, you're doing fine. Do talk to them on a regular basis. Open door policy, it shouldn't just be on paper. It should actually be physically doing it. I have worked in an organization that organization has great open door policy. They post it all over the building. And whenever you need something from a manager, oh, I'm too busy. Or the door is always closed, or always on the phone, or something. A great manager actually spends lots of time on the floor talking to people and always have time for people. And then also observing, you observe the interactions between the potential successors with others. You hear the kind of conversations, not to stalk them, of course, but you hear the kind of conversations. You kind of know if they're interested or not. Are they struggling? Because they don't know if they have a future with the company, then it's a point to open up the conversation. And so basically, this is the chart that we looked at. CEO is going to be out in less than a year and a half. COO maybe right away, maybe a long time. And the sales director is leaving soon. The technology specialist maybe in 2 years. But regardless how much time you have, I have shared so many examples with the McDonald's CEO example, with the Williams engineering example in Edmonton. Things do happen. So regardless how much time you think you have based on the chart, start right now. Don't wait until this project is done. Wait until this program is out. Let's start talking about it right now. So at the end, I just want to put this all together to summarize. First of all, to have a good succession planning program, we want to first talk about the purpose. Why do we even want to have it? And what are we trying to continue off for the business? Get the leaders' commitment supports. We know that if it's not on the CEOs or the senior leaders' performance review, they're not going to care about it. Especially if it's not tied to their compensation or tied to their reputation, they're not going to care about it. We also want to indicate what succession planning needs to cover. So that's part of your overall plan. It needs to have steps. and identify the critical positions. And if we have in-house successors, if so, when they're ready, just like the chart I prepared for you. If not, what do we do externally? Prepare the key talent, whether they're hired or groomed from within or hired externally, and then confirm, follow a timeline, implement the plan, monitor, and adjust. As I mentioned, the plan is a plan. We're dealing with humans, and humans are always changing, where it's gray, it's not black and white. So plans do change. We need to look at, after implementation, monitor and adjust on a regular basis. So the last slide is just a few final tips. Why does succession planning fail? Many of it is because it's not tied to your company's KPI, the overall strategic plan. And succession planning really needs to be on the radar for the senior leaders of the company. And also get the board on board, especially if you have a board for your organization. A good practice to remember for the board is always get them informed, maybe even get them involved in the succession planning process. Remember, succession planning can take up to 5 years or longer. It's a really diligent, systematic planning process. And I wish you all the best in doing your succession planning. Thank you.